I first got involved in hip hop by doing graphic design, doing flyers. That was my major in college, and I was always this artistic phenom. So the left side of my brain was always kicking. And I would do hip hop flyers on Long Island and Queens, and all of a sudden I got involved in being involved with a mobile DJ unit called Spectrum, Hank Shockley, in 1979. And coincidentally, the first hip hop records came out in July 1979 and October 1979. I was already a sophomore in college. So the bug had hit me because I thought it was inconceivable that there could be such thing as a hip hop record or a rap record, because it was a party thing about 3 hours long. So when the first hip hop record came out, or I should say that when the second one came out in October, Sugar Hill Gang's Rapper's Delight, it was 15 minutes long. But the ironic fact was how short the record was as opposed to how lengthy it was.
All could get a passport just to get one symbolically, because I think that's an easy route to do. Now somebody said getting a passport, suppose you can't get out of your town. Just symbolically spend the $60 or the $70, get a passport, and then you start to see some of the hypocrisy in the United States of America trying to not let us be free people to the world.
First met Chuck D and Hank Shockley and Keith Shockley, I was with my boy Son of Berserk. And Son of Berserk was part of a group called the Townhouse 3, which was a rap group under the wing of Chuck and Hank and Keith. And one day, Son of Berserk wanted me to play some keyboards on his track that they were making for the radio show. Next thing you know, Chuck and Hank and Keith, they kind of fell in love with the guy. So I started hanging out with them. And I became part of their group, Spectrum City. And we had a friend named Bill Stephanie, who was going to Adelphi University. And Bill Stephanie had a radio show on WBAU 90.3 FM at Adelphi. And he happened to get Chuck, Keith, and Hank on the radio for the Spectrum City Mix Hour and 1/2. So as we were doing this radio show, and they was like, yo, Flav, we need to get you a radio show. We need to put you on the radio.
In the late 80s, Public Enemy released two of the most important hip-hop albums of all time, bringing the noise and a message back to the music that reverberates to this day. Originating from Long Island, New York, Public Enemy never quietly maneuvered their way to the top. They exploded fast and furiously. Formed in 1985 by university students Carlton Ridenauer, alias Chuck D, and William Drayton, alias Flavor Flav. The two wanted to make music that wasn't just socially conscious, but musically explosive. After being heard by Rick Rubin, the band's early demos began to be circulated among producers, eventually landing the group a support spot on the Beastie Boys' License to Ill tour in 1986. This was even before the newly named Public Enemy had released their debut album.
Yeah, it was no rules, no knowns, but it also pushed us. And for me, like I said, once you understand that everything comes from the turntable, now everything else becomes, easy, because it's not about, trying to figure out how to take technology to work. It's about now, how do I make the records that are from these records work in a certain arrangement? And so then you just use whatever, because before there was any, samplers, because people don't realize that the sampling at the time wasn't, when I first did the first record, it wasn't available. So we had to kind of like invent that. And so then how do you invent those things?
So that was the, and it's funny because it just so happened that Chuck and Flav's voice, Flavor has this kind of like, Chuck's voice is baritone. Flav's voice is close to being a tenor. He's in that, he's in that high frequency zone. But those vocals really complement each other. You know, whereas you knew Flav and you knew Chuck, and they were distinct and they were different parts. So that also adds another element, because I think that, you know, when we produce records, especially a lot of producers, I see a lot of producers spend a billion years on instrumentation. And I think that instrumentation is part of it, but to me, the most important part of any song is the vocal. And I think that if I want to produce vocals like you produce music in that fashion. And it's funny because his approach to the language is not like the typical, you know, American rappers would pretty much approach it. I mean, he approaches it from a very literary sense. So thus, his words reverberated outside of the rap community. And that's why I think that, you know, Chuck was pretty much heralded as one of the best rappers. His vocabulary was a lot bigger.
I never considered myself a talent. I always considered myself somebody who was like Pete Rose in baseball. I have to run and hustle and dive to first base. There's guys like Big Daddy Kane, hands up and hands down, the most talented rapper I've ever seen. Somebody who could come off the top of their head. I never had those talents. The only talent I think that was really God-given was my voice. And back in the early days of rhyming in hip-hop, you had to have a strong voice because most of the systems were cheap. So if you didn't have a voice that can cut, people would say, get off the mic, and I never got thrown off the mic. I'm like the Satchel Paige of rap music and hip-hop. Our sole intent was to destroy music. And sonically, we set out to do that, to redefine what people thought of as music, I said, at least in the black urban sense and rap. And also to be able to say something. Rap was basically about, to us, is saying what you know and saying what you believe. And just filling the rap up with words. And being at my first records, I'm 26, 27 years old, I'm not going to try to sound like a 13-year-old kid. And I'm not going to try to appeal to them either. Because to me, rap was a grown person's sport as a hit myself. So obviously, being a child of the 60s, I'm going to, you know, say what I know, or say what had impact and influence on me.
He says, yo, man, what's up with your boy Chuck D, man? I want to battle him. I said, well, yo, Chuck D, man, we don't be battling. His name was Chucky D at the time, not Chuck D, but Chucky D. Like, yo, Chucky D, man, we don't battle. If anything, we'll let you battle somebody. We'll put on the gig and everything, put you out there, the whole nine, the whole shit. So when I got to the studio, finally got to the studio, I hear something going. That Chuck D had a cassette tape, the tape coming out of the cassette deck, going around a microphone stand, and right back into the cassette deck. That was the first loop, ladies and gentlemen. Yes. So I told my partner Chuck D, I said, yo, man, this guy Ron D. Whaley, man, yo, he wants to battle you, man. You know what I'm saying, the whole nine. And he said that that you swear you nice, Chuck. But I said, yo, Chuck, yo, G, you know what I'm saying? I told Ron D, I said, yo, my boy don't swear he nice, he knows he's nice. So Chuck was like, yo, put that story on the beginning of this tape, right now. Put it on the beginning of this tape. So then that's when I said, yo, Chuck, I was on my way up here to the studio, man, you know what I'm saying? This brother stopped me and asked me, yo, what's up with your brother Chucky D? He swear he nice. I said, yo, the brother don't swear he nice, he knows he's nice, you know what I'm saying? So Chuck, I got a feeling you turned it into a public enemy, man. Now remember that line you was kicking to me on the way out to LA, Laurelton, Queens, when we was in the car on our way to the shop? But yo, right now, kick the bass for them brothers and let them know what goes on. Chuck D said, what goes on? Well,
Thanks to heavy-hitting content of their 1987 debut album, Yo Bum Rush the Show, and their follow-up album, It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back, Public Enemy had already established themselves as elder statesmen in hip-hop's most defiant and radical era.
when I came out with Yeah Boy, everybody started sampling that shit. Everybody started sampling that shit. And also, when I said, rock that shit, homie, people started sampling that. Next thing you know, I became the most sampled voice right now to this day as we speak in the history of music.
So there you have it, in their own words. You've been watching Cultural Ambassadors Part 2 with Public Enemy. Thank you for watching, and thank you for listening. Stay tuned, and I'll catch you on the next one.
Age should bring knowledge, wisdom, and overstanding as much as the understanding and comprehension. But it doesn't come without work. You know, you just can't sit there and age like wine, just sitting there. You gotta kind of like go at it.